Hello, everyone. Welcome. Tonight's topic is Global Citizenship Education. You can see by the title here, I just titled it Schools Making Children Compliant Little Globalists. I think this is a really important topic for people to be aware of and to understand. Joining me tonight is my guest. The kids are not all right, and you can see here she has her avatar here, the apple with the kind of time bomb on it here. So just kind of briefly, I just want to mention that for various reasons, some people prefer to be anonymous online. There's a lot of legitimate reasons for that. I just wanted to let everybody know that I know who she is. I've been friends with her for a while. She knows a lot about she researches and presents a lot of information on what's happening in the schools, and so she knows what she's talking about, and I'm glad to have her with us tonight. I'm going to be her. I put her handle, her Twitter handle, in the description. It's hide your kids 0 at hide your kids 0, and she goes by the name The Kids Are Not All Right. I'm going to be referring to her as kids, just because saying the whole thing out, can get kind of long. So just so you kind of know that up front. So kids, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Right on. So she created a kind of a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll mention that I added some slides to it. She made, I'll bring it up here so everybody can see it. This is kind of like, we're going to kind of go through this to present the information. She made these nice slides here with the graphics and stuff like that. I added some slides in that are very basic, so just so you can kind of tell the difference of what the difference is. But anyway, do you want me to kind of just start through with the first slide here, and we'll just kind of jump right into it? Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so the goal today is to just provide, a pretty broad overview of what global citizenship education is, where it comes from, what it's connected with, what it looks like, and just like answer some, common questions that people might have about it.
Sure. Yeah, and I know I got a kind of few questions myself. So I'll jump to the kind of next slide here. Now, in what I did, like I mentioned before, I kind of added some slides just because I know sometimes it can be difficult to read. For those of you viewing, it can be difficult to read. So I tried to kind of zoom in on some of the stuff to make it a little easier to see. But this one here is, what is global citizenship education? And the first kind of bullet point here is, go ahead, kids.
Yeah.
I'll let you kind of go through it.
Okay, so global citizenship education, as defined by the United Nations, UNESCO, is a form of civic learning that involves students' active participation in projects that address global issues of social, political, economic, and environmental nature. So the goal here, and again, this is explicit from UNESCO, is international solidarity. So that should ring some alarm bells to you, because that's like a Marxian conception. And you might have like class solidarity, for example, like that's a core part of being class conscious. So international solidarity would be like a global consciousness, which we'll get to next.
Sure. And like just right off the bat, right? I mean, so you mentioned the United Nations, right? And for someone who might not be familiar with what's going on, and to hear, to come on and to be watching this video and to just kind of be trying, seeing if what they can hear about global citizenship education, and all of a sudden, kind of like the United Nations kind of popping up right away, kind of seems kind of strange. And this UNESCO, I just wanted to kind of put this slide here for people who aren't familiar with it. So just kind of so you can get a little more understanding of what this is. This is a United Nations organization, right? UNESCO is the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization. It contributes to peace and security by promoting international cooperation. Well, of course, this is what they're saying, right? Contributes to peace and security by promoting international cooperation in education, sciences, culture, communication, and information. UNESCO promotes knowledge sharing and the free flow of ideas to accelerate mutual understanding and a more perfect knowledge of each other's lives. UNESCO's programs contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So I just right off the bat, that Sustainable Development Goals should jump right out at you as a red flag. Anybody that's been kind of following my posts or following my videos, certainly the very first one, America Under Attack, I talked very specifically about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. But I just wanted to kind of point that out right off the bat. And let me see here the mission of UNESCO. UNESCO has main priorities for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. There it is again, and the improvement of the human condition. So, right off the bat, I think it's important for people to understand that the United Nations has a hand in the education system, what's happening in schools, as kind of like strange as that might sound to people who aren't familiar with what's going on, but they are deeply involved in this, and it's very much tied to the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals agenda. So,
Okay, so global citizenship education represents a comprehensive educational approach. So we'll get to that. We'll go over like all the different aspects of this, but it's not just like social emotional learning or like one aspect. This is comprehensive. And the aim is to prepare individuals to be active, informed, and responsible global citizens. I mean, obviously, those are just buzzwords for what UNESCO was previously describing as international
Sure.
solidarity and global consciousness.
Okay, sure. And I believe this was the last bullet point on that first slide there.
Yeah. So I do want to talk just a little bit. We'll get into the global competencies specifically, but I just want to talk a little bit more about global consciousness. So some of you might be aware of the Marxist educator Paulo Freire. This is where we get the term woke from in part. It's partially from Black liberation, but it's also, from Freirean critical consciousness. So a lot of education right now is designed to raise your critical consciousness, raise your, ability to like critically analyze and understand like social, political, and economic structures, structures of oppression and privilege and power. So it's not just recognizing these systemic inequalities, but it's also challenging them. Like it's a cycle of self-reflection, awareness, critical analysis, and then action, repeat over and over and over again. It's basically perpetual revolution. So
Okay.
in the context of this, this is just basically critical consciousness zoomed out to global solidarity. Just like a little bit more on critical consciousness. So Paulo Freire, he is an explicit Marxist. I recommend reading the book, The Marxification of Education by James Lindsay, if you really want to get into this. But it's more or less a bridge step in between class consciousness, which is being aware of your class and you're aware of your position and capacity to be capacity in history as a history maker, and you understand the importance of solidarity and accomplishing that. So it's between that class consciousness, which is, very traditional Marxian, to what they would call true consciousness, which is like, the positive transcendence of private property, like true stateless classlessness. Is basically the eschaton. It's eschatological. It's obviously not going to happen. But anyway, the point was that, how are you supposed to get from being conscious, like conscious of your class, and then transcend class? Like, how are you supposed to solve for that? So, you have like Engels, if I recall correctly, and Lenin, who were like, oh, it's, the proletariat, the dictatorship of the proletariat reaches its zenith of power, and then it sacrifices itself, and then everything is fine. In this case, it's more like a postmodern iteration of that, where, you just perpetually tear down all of the bad things in society. So, when you see the woke whining about everything, that is critical consciousness. It's, tearing down existing structures of inequality to, sort of uncover the kernel of a perfected society within.
Right. So, I'm glad you tied woke, the term woke, with critical consciousness, because some people may not be familiar with the term critical consciousness as much, but they're they hear this term woke all the time, and they have some familiarity with that term. And you're saying that, like, it's the critical consciousness is basically I guess, for lack of a better term, a little more technical term for woke.
Yeah, just like think of, just the language of it. You've woke, you're awakened to, these systems of power. So you can see these inequalities and systems of power. And you can also see, that you have to act. It's, like Gramsci, the Antonio Gramsci, which people would consider to be the father of cultural Marxism, called Marxism the philosophy of praxis. So it's both being aware and doing the action.
Okay, right. So, and the global citizenship education is basically, like you said, is basically that concept kind of expanded out to a globalist agenda. Is that
Mhm.
no? Okay, okay. Um, and you said, in terms of the global competencies, we'll get to them a little bit later. Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
okay?
So, and also I just want to quickly add too with global consciousness, like, okay, yeah, it's a shared awareness and responsibility, for these global systems of inequality. But there's also like an alternative, like you might hear that same language in like new age circles about, oh, we're all one. It's a collective consciousness, so there's a little bit of like a double language thing going on here in my assessment.
Okay, okay. So just like everything else, it's you got it. You not only do you have to be understand the different meanings of the words, but not also the various contexts that they're used in. Um, but that's such important to be able to do that, because otherwise, you're completely lost as to what's going on. All right, so let me pop to the next slide here. All right, so I just so this is on the sustainable development goals. Kids, I did the same thing. I just broke these down into two different bullet points. So I'm gonna just jump to the next slide if that's okay.
Mhm.
Um, Here it is. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is really important to keep in mind. And I know Paul included some of the logos for the Sustainable Development Goals in future slides. So, you'll see a little colorful circle. And I just want you to keep your eyes peeled for that, because that is what that is referring to as Sustainable Development Goals. So these are a set of 17 interconnected global objectives adopted by the United Nations, subsequently adopted by, a lot of nations, states, private companies. Like it's pretty wide ranging, but it starts with the United Nations to address a range of, what they consider to be pressing issues on poverty, inequality, climate change. That's very important. Environmental sustainability, peace, and justice. And they, claim that the overarching aim is to create a quote more equitable and sustainable world by 2030. So sometimes you might hear these referred to as the 2030 goals. And just keep in mind, equitable and sustainable, these are basically terms for communism. I mean, that's just, how it is.
100%. And those listening, right? Like I said, if you followed some of the videos, some of the posts, whatever, like those, and like kids just mentioned, like those words should jump right out at you as red flags. You'll see them pretty much everywhere. Equity or equitable and sustainable, right? They should jump right out at you as red flags, right? Basically, equities basically means socialism, which has the goal of communism. I mean, exactly what what you just said. So yeah, keep that in mind as we go through these slides and as you learn more about the global citizenship and the globalist agenda, right? Those are major red flag words. So this is just basically a diagram laid out here of an image of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, right? They have 17 of them here. This is what you'll see in terms of when you go to look them up. And like kids mentioned, well, you can see up here too in the word goals. The O in the word goals is kind of like multicolored circle here, the 7, which represents the 17 different sustainable development goals, right? But here they are kind of blown up a little bit bigger. Anytime you see this symbol, this is another red flag. And like I mentioned, in some previous videos and stuff, when you see this symbol, I mean, this is the new symbol of tyranny. Is you should understand that and look at this. As far as I'm concerned, just like the swastika, just like the the Nazi swastika, just like the communist hammer and sickle, like, because this is what they have in mind, a totalitarian government. Let me see here. Okay, so this was the second point on that sustainable development goals that you had that I blew up a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
So as a part of that, there is sustainable development goal number 4, which is quality education. So that's where this all kind of fits in, is goal number 4.
Yeah. So I'm just hang. If you just hang on a second, I'm just going to pop back and to show everybody here, right? So this is goal number 1, says no poverty, right? Goal number 2, zero hunger. Goal number 3, good health and well-being. Goal number 4 here with the book and the pencil here, I believe that's probably what it is. Quality education. So this is what kids is talking about in terms of goal number 4. This is the symbol that represents it. Okay, go ahead. Just wanted to kind of point that out visually.
Yeah. Okay, so goal number 4 mandates the fostering of education for global citizenship by calling on countries to, quote, ensure that all learners are provided with the knowledge and skills to promote sustainable development, including, among other things, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, and an appreciation for cultural diversity and of a culture's contribution to sustainable development. So you see here over and over again, sustainable development, sustainable development, sustainable development. This is
unbelievable. But yes,
that is not a good thing.
No, not at all. But it's just like, it's unbelievable. Like, I think if those 2 words, equity and sustainable, it's like almost when you get in a situation where, like, administrative speak, or you're listening to politician or whatever, and, like, if they get caught, they don't know what to say, they just start like spurting out equitable and like sustainable and like adding a couple words to it just to make it sound like important or something. But this is all, this is tied to this agenda. Okay, let me jump to the next slide here. Oh, okay. So this is, I put this in here. This is just that goal number 4. You had mentioned that, this specifically the 4.7 in that previous slide. This is too small to kind of see and read, but I just wanted to. when you go through the sustainable development goals, they're broken down. Like, you have goal number 1 and they're broken down into multiple different kind of subsets. Goal number 2, multiple subsets, right? This is goal number 4, the quality education goal. This is target 4.7. I just wanted to kind of show how they're broken down a little bit. It's too small to read on the screen, but I just wanted to show that image. All right, so this is on global citizenship, and I will just pop to zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, so I got these definitions specifically from the Global Citizenship Foundation. They define a global citizen as someone who is open-minded, curious, compassionate, collaborative, co-creative, inclusive, non-discriminatory, responsible, reflective, and well-informed individual. You can't see me, but my eyes were rolling the entire time.
Of course.
Because it sounds all very nice, but really, really think about the way that they use language, and when they say inclusive and reflective. Like when they say reflective, for example, like what they're specifically referring to is that reflective aspect of what I was talking about before with critical consciousness, aka wokeness, is reflecting on how you can do better. It's like Maoist struggle session reflection. It's not the kind of like floaty nice thing that they're trying to present it as.
Right. And you can see how someone who's maybe seeing this stuff either for the first time, or for who hasn't had the time or the interest to really look into it and see what's going on. If you're kind of looking at the surface level, right, it's very flowery language. It sounds very good. Like who wouldn't be who would be against this, right? You want some open-minded, curious, compassionate, right, collaborative, right? All of these, like you said before, these kind of like these buzzwords, these filler words, that kind of what could be used to describe anything that people want to sell. Okay, so this is the next point from that slide.
Yeah, so, again, continuing from explicitly what the Global Citizenship Foundation says, becoming a global citizen is a lifelong learning process that requires continuous reflection on our perspectives. To become a global citizen means one is a lifelong learner, ready to learn, unlearn, and relearn. A global citizen is someone who is aware and acknowledges the multiple concentric identities that transcend geographical or political boundaries and takes action towards human and planetary flourishing. So, like Paul said, there it is. That is, your woke consciousness, you're constantly getting struggled, like, you're in Mao's China. You have to learn, unlearn your biases and relearn the proper way of, the right way of relating to other people from a communist perspective. Multiple concentric identities, that's, a lot of people are familiar with, like intersectional identities, that kind of stuff. Comes from Kimberly Crenshaw in intersectionality. In this case, it's at the global level, but it's the same thing. You have your race and your gender, and so now you have like global north versus the global south, or you have migrants, versus quote unquote natives, like that kind of thing.
Right.
And then,
sure.
Most importantly, takes action. Whenever you see things about like Marxist theories of various sorts, it is a philosophy of praxis. That means action. So there's always that little trick where, something seems like, oh, it's just an idea, it's just a theory. Oh, it's just critical race theory. They're not doing it. They're not teaching kids critical race theory. They're doing critical race theory on kids. It's praxis. So again, just keep that in mind, because, there's always this component of action, and, activism is sort of like the currency in this world.
And you can see how kids has covered that concept numerous times just in the slides that we've gone through already, right? That is such a key concept to understand. Not only do you have to, do you have to take on the worldview of critical consciousness, of woke, of the globalist agenda, but um, you have to become an activist. You have to, as it says here, you have to take action to create that vision of that agenda, to create it in the world. Um, Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, so this is conceptual domains. I'll zoom in on each one of these if that's okay with you. Would you rather leave this up first, or is it okay if I zoom in on each
Yeah, you can zoom
individually?
in.
Okay, so this is the first one here.
Okay, so there are three conceptual domains that interlock together. The first one is knowledge. So this is the cognitive aspect. They define this as developing knowledge about global citizenship. So those are things like human rights, social justice, sustainable development. In the little circle slide that I got from Global Citizen Education Solutions, cognitive is, becoming knowledgeable and quote critically literate about global issues related to the environment, human rights, and things like that. This is just another opportunity for me to point out Paulo Freire, that was his thing. He's a Marxist educational theorist specifically for adult literacy. So, he has like a weird, I guess you would call it like a hermeneutic of reading, like reading the world. So you learn to read your political situation, in a Marxist communist context, and understand what you're supposed to do about that. So that's what they mean by quote critically literate.
And I have a zoomed in image of that, a zoomed in slide of that image as well after we go through each bullet points. So I'd like to come back to that, because I think that's definitely an important point. And also here, keep in mind for those watching, right? So how it's talking about human rights here. We're gonna touch base a little bit on what human rights means a little bit later in this video. So just keep that in mind. And obviously, here's social justice again, and of course sustainable development, which is almost in every single thing. So all right, here's the next bullet.
Yeah. So, in addition to learning knowledge, like the cognitive aspect, you also have the affective aspect. So, socio emotional. A lot of people at this point have probably heard of social emotional learning. I'm not going to get too much into that because it would take an entire show.
Sure, that's a
But
whole
just,
nother topic, but for sure, go
yeah,
ahead.
but
Yeah.
just like keep that in mind that like it's all kind of tied together. Like all of this, it's huge. It encompasses so many different things. So in this case, specifically as it relates to the sustainable development goals, it's developing positive attitudes and values related to global citizenship, which they, include as like respect for diversity, empathy, and again, solidarity. So, having that class consciousness or, your critical consciousness and, the critical solidarity. So knowing that you need to band together and act as, a class, like a global class.
Okay.
It's workers of the world unite, basically.
Right. Okay, here's the last bullet point with that slide.
And then lastly, behavioral, so psychomotor, this is developing the skills and competencies needed to take those actions as a global citizen. So critical thinking, double meaning there, like the critical that I've been talking about, problem
Yes.
solving, and effective communication. So, all of these, like the cognitive, affective, psychomotor, all kind of go together as a part of global citizenship education.
Okay, and here's that image. And you know what? I do want to spend a little bit more time on that word critical. And we'll do that as we come across it. But I know the blue at top is going to be hard for people to see. But kids, I don't know if either you can see it or if you have another copy in front of you, or would you mind
Yeah, I can.
kind of
Yeah, I
going
can
through
read
that
it.
part again? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so it says for cognitive, students become knowledgeable and critically literate about global issues related to the environment, development, human rights, and citizenship.
Okay. Right. So just to jump back to that word critical or critically in this case, um, like kids was saying, it's important to understand how how the woke use this term and how this term is being used in this context. Um, and I know I kind of talk about this on a pretty regular basis, but I'm going to mention it again because it's so important to know. And obviously, it's coming up. It's coming up again in these slides and with this topic. Um, when people hear critical, it can mean a lot of different things. It can mean potentially like an important piece to something, right? A critical component to whatever, let's say a vehicle, right? If a critical component to your car breaks, then there's going to be a problem. It could also kind of seem like it means like analytical, right? When it's used in the terms of critical thinking, most people think that it kind of means like kind of analyzing whatever the issue is, kind of critically thinking through it, right? But what you have to understand in this context here, it literally means to criticize, to be critical, or to take on that critical consciousness, which is woke, right? Which the general term for that is woke, the critical consciousness, to basically complain and to point out and to problematize everything in society. So when it says here to students become knowledgeable and critically literate, to become critically literate is to become literate in the politics of critical consciousness, in the politics of wokeness. So that is so important, so important to understand. And that
I
goes
just want to.
go. Yeah,
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
So just to really drive this home and like tie it specifically back to Marxism. So
Yeah.
this sort of critique, that is the ethos of it is like perpetual, like dialectical critique to uncover the existing perfected order. So I have a quote from like a letter that Karl Marx was writing to his friend Arnauld Rouge. This is from 1843. So I'm just going to read this so that you can kind of get a picture of where criticism fits in all of this. So,
Sure.
quote, now philosophy has become mundane. And the most striking proof of this is that that philosophical consciousness itself has been drawn to the torment of the struggle, not only externally, but also internally. But if constructing the future and settling everything for all times are not our affair, it is all the more clear that what we have to accomplish at present. I am referring to ruthless criticism of all that exists. Ruthless both in the sense of not being afraid of the results it arrives at, and in the sense of being just as little afraid of conflict with the powers that be. So that that is what he wrote to his friend. Also, I think he was rumored, to really like Faust, from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. I don't know how you say that. It's a German word, Goth.
Okay.
But it's a tragedy, and the character Mephistopheles, who I think is a stand-in for like the devil. His favorite quote, which he was said to repeat pretty often, was that everything that exists deserves to perish. All that exists deserves to perish. So that is what criticism is. It is just destroying the existing world and trying to find the kernel of perfection in the rubble.
So I mean, so listen, so really anybody that's listening or watching, and you just think about what's been happening in society, right? For for the past few years at least, but even beyond, but certainly since summer of 2020, right? Just the ruthless problematizing, the ruthless criticism, the ruthless destruction of and attacks on culture, on everything, really, right? This is fundamentally where it's coming from. Okay, so we want to jump to one of the other ones here, the social, emotional, or behavioral.
Yeah.
just real quickly, also, by the way, in the cognitive one, in the blue one up here, it also mentions human rights again. And like I said, we're going to touch base on that in a little while. Go ahead.
Okay, so the socio-emotional students develop values, attitudes that help them live respectfully and peacefully with others from around the world. I would sort of call this like cognitive dissonance management, where they're feeling uncomfortable about their assessment of the world and their feelings. And it's basically like, I mean, the migrant crisis, for example, would be something that you could tie into global citizenship education and like try to get the kids to, maybe ignore their instincts or their feelings or their assessments about what is happening. And then similarly, behavioral. So students are motivated to participate, fight injustice, and become agents of change. So, it is the philosophy of praxis again that this is communism right here. Like this is what global citizenship education is.
Right. And just I'm just going to emphasize again, right, that agents of change wording right there, like like you've been mentioning, to take action, to become an activist, to bring this communism, to bring this worldview into existence in the world. Um, okay, I'm going to slide to the next one here. All right. So empowers individuals too, and I just kind of broke this down into two slides here, zoomed in a little bit. Here we go.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of go over this quickly because, we've kind of talked a lot about it so far, but
Okay. Okay.
it quote empowers, this is their language, to reflect on their biases and assumptions, value diversity and inclusion, develop a greater understanding of countries, communities, and cultures around the world, and events shaping our world, explore questions about democracy, justice, inequality, governance, sustainability, and organization.
Right. So I'm just gonna just for a second. I'm just gonna like mention again, because to some people, like I said, who may not be familiar with this and are kind of reading these words and be like, so what's the big deal about kids learning about global citizenship and being and being more, inclusive and understanding, other cultures and other people and how events are shaping our world, as it says here, right? And all of this stuff, right? What's wrong with that? And what people have to understand is, you know, they're using very vague language, but that they have specific meanings to that, let's say, the average person doesn't know about, right? And when they're talking about being inclusive or whatever they're talking about, it's all in support of their globalist agenda. All of their language is in support of their globalist agenda. Anybody who does not conform to that, does not subscribe to that belief system, does not go along with it, is going to be, is not going to be included, is not going, you're not going to count. You're not going to count. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of once again point out the language manipulations that are used. So we'll
Yeah,
go
and
to
just
the. Go ahead. Go ahead.
just quickly, like when you think about global citizen, like what is a citizen? A citizen is someone who is a member of a sovereign nation. So in order to have a global citizen, you also have to have a global sovereign. Um, so just kind of think about that. And there's also other aspects that come with citizenship. There's like rights and privileges, there's responsibilities, there's participation and governance. Like it all generally implies global governance, which is obviously hugely problematic. I am
That
an American citizen. I am not a global citizen.
that's a huge point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. There's no such thing as a global citizen, and global citizenship. Like you said, there's no global government there, who well, I know they're trying. I know they're trying, but they haven't got there yet, and hopefully we can prevent them from doing it. All right, so this was the next grouping on that slide.
Yeah. So, again, it's empowering them to learn to work together to create solutions. Again, that's through activism that try to address local, national, and global challenges, enhance knowledge, skills, and competencies to make positive contributions to society as informed and responsible global citizens, take action toward achieving a more just, inclusive, peaceful, prosperous, secure, and sustainable world for all. I mean, that
So
is
basically,
just,
take action for our agenda. Take
yeah.
action for the globalist agenda.
And
That's they don't want you taking action to oppose them. That's so. Anyway, no, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, that's just every communist watchword you can possibly fit into a single sentence in there, just, inclusive, prosperous. If you see quote for all, like that should be a red flag to you that
Okay,
something more is
sure.
going on. I know that it sounds fine, of course you want equality and you want things for everyone, but it's equity. It is, everyone receiving a share of this cultural and possibly literal capital. And taken into the global level, you're also talking about the global north and the global south. So we have to cut our energy so that, quote unquote, the global south of China can increase their energy and pollute more. It's completely backwards. And it's just flat out communism. Anyway, and then lastly is to realize one's capacity for change and the ability to take one's place as responsible global citizens. So this is just flat out, one of the steps of raising class consciousness, Marxian class consciousness, is knowing that you are a subject of history and that, you can control the direction of history, if you have the right awareness and solidarity.
Okay. All right. So this is obviously this is showing a kind of umbrella concepts here. I know it's very small. I'm going to try to zoom in on some of this stuff, but it's kind of showing umbrella concepts, global citizenship of global citizenship education. Do you mind if I zoom in on each one of these a little bit more here?
Yeah.
Let's see if that's a little helpful. So that first one there is, go ahead.
Yeah, so, it's diversity and inclusion, DEI, so that's gender equality, anti-racist education, I'm sure at this point many people are familiar, with Ibram X.
Right.
Kendi and like that style of anti-racism, multicultural education.
Okay.
You also have civic participation, so civics education, development education, social justice, and like if you hear civics education, you're probably thinking, oh, they're just learning how to participate in American, civics engagement. Well, remember, this is global citizens, so they're not being taught how to engage, and I mean, even if they are, to the extent that it's local or state or national, it's in service to a global agenda. It's meant to,
Go out and start a protest or participate in a protest for
yeah.
about climate change or something like that, and come back and whatever. I don't even
Yeah,
know if
set yourself
they
on.
make them write a report on it, or maybe anymore. They probably have them just bring in their protest sign and to show that they that they were there. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. Okay. And this one's a little
Okay.
dark and maybe a little hard to read. I'm not sure if you can pick that up. Go
Yeah.
ahead. I'll go. Okay.
So this is education for economic participation. This is really important. Part of what I'm trying to emphasize here too, and this is from Global Citizenship Education Solution. So it's not like I created this graphic, but
Right.
I included it specifically because it includes entrepreneurial education, 21st century skills, and intercultural education. So this might be what some would call the right hand of the left. You'll see this in a lot of red states: reskilling and upskilling, reimagined education. All of these little like similar buzzwords for participation in the global economy. This is more like the OECD end of the supranational bodies that are overseeing all of this. You have the United Nations, you have the OECD, the World Economic Forum, those kinds of things. So
Okay.
also the World Economic Forum. So if you see like reskilling and upskilling, that should be a red flag.
Okay. And this one's a little dark as well, but go ahead if you can get that one.
Yeah. And lastly, education for managing resources. So education for sustainable development. I'm so tired of saying that word.
I hear you. Nonstop.
Environmental science education and conservation education / nature studies. So this is climate change and sustainability and, all of the green eco initiatives, and raising consciousness and, a political attitude and action towards that.
Okay. Let me see here. All right. So I just have a short video. I think it's like whatever. It's like 2 minutes long. This is from UNESCO, United Nations Education, Science, Cultural Organization, right? The organization that we've been kind of talking about here. This is a short video on global citizenship education. Like I said, it's about 2 minutes long. I'm just going to add this. I'm just going to show this here real quick.
Building a more sustainable and peaceful world must start on the benches.
Yo, right off the bat, right? Right off the bat, building a more sustainable, right? It's like nonstop with that.
Building a more sustainable and peaceful world must start on the benches of schools, in classrooms. This is the goal of global citizenship education, building on shared aspirations across the world. It provides learners with the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes to live together and build a more sustainable and peaceful world. Across the world, societies have developed ways of thinking and acting to help ensure their members thrive sustainably and live in peace. We must make...
Yo, we're 30 seconds in and she's talking sustainably 3 times already. So I'm going to count. We're going to drink every time we hear it. All right, here we go.
Wealth of knowledge to benefit us all. Everything springs from long-held values already helping communities to flourish. For instance, in Bolivia, people live according to a set of principles called buen vivir, which revolve around solidarity, generosity, and social justice.
There's solidarity again, right?
Are taught in the classroom. In Canada, the core principle of respect for cultural diversity is reflected in the pride that Canadians have in their ancestry, wherever they are from, as a source of shared strength and identity, something also to be learned and taught. And in South Africa, the humanist concept of Ubuntu, with its central notion of a shared humanity, is at the heart of educational approaches. For UNESCO, global citizenship education draws inspiration from the core values of society across the world, reflecting humanity's shared DNA in our common belief in respect for diversity, solidarity, and shared humanity. Of course, there are local variations to this principle that focus also on peaceful social relationships, hospitality, generosity, equitable development, and harmony with the natural environment. Through global citizenship education, UNESCO seeks to show that though we have many different ways of expressing it, we all share common aspirations to live in peace. This is why global citizenship education is at the heart of Sustainable Development Goal 4, and why UNESCO is working with governments and societies across the world to learn to live together sustainably and peacefully.
Wow. Every 5 seconds. So, okay. So, that's just a quick video. I just want to show, she mentioned 3 countries in here as kind of like, examples of their, of their goals or whatever, right? So Bolivia was one of them here, right? Just real quickly, right? So Bolivia's socialist rulers mend ties with capitalists in a nation on the brink. So yeah, there's something to be looking up for, right? Bolivia's socialist government is mending ties with business leaders it once snubbed as it grapples to prevent a dollar shortage from crashing the economy. So anyway, I'm not sure if that, you necessarily want to hold them up to be a shining example of what to shoot for. So here's Canada. This is the other country that she had mentioned. Right, here's Canada. Banks are moving to freeze accounts linked to convoy protests. This happened a few years ago, right? When there was the protest, the trucker convoy in Ottawa. They froze the bank accounts of some of those protesters, like 200 of them. So this is so people can't even peacefully protest without the government, taking their money away, shutting their access to their money down. And I'm sorry, I didn't put them on the screen. This was the well, I mentioned them. I'm going to skip through. I should have had them on the screen. I apologize for that. This one's South Africa. As police lose the war on crime in South Africa, private security companies step in. Right? Where are we at here? It's all too common story in South Africa, a country in the past has seen an average of 75 in the past year has seen an average of 75 killings and 400 robberies with aggravating circumstances every day, according to official statistics. While it may be Africa's most developed country, it also has one of the highest violent crime rates in the world. Yeah, so maybe these aren't, the countries that United Nations should be pointing to as the examples of the rest of what the rest of the world should be. All right, let me add these slides back here. So we got just under about 10 minutes. I'm going to kind of maybe move a little bit quicker through some of these last ones here. I want to try to stay on time, but I want to see if we can cover some of this other information. So I'll let you go ahead and go through this one, Des. I think this was actually the last one that you had.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, my hope here is just, that you just keep your eyes out. You check your state, you check your local district. Like, for example, I'm not going to tell you where I am, but my local school district, which is a pretty large one, in the mission and vision statement is to create global citizens. That is the explicit language that they're using. It's not just in mine, it's in a ton. It's also built into the teachers' trainings. It's built into how they get trained initially, their ongoing education, the standards for licensure. It's in everything from pre-K to advanced degrees. I've literally seen it for pre-kindergarten aged children. A lot of states have explicit global citizenship education built into their, their educational agency. What I mean by that is it's promoted by their educational agency. It's all of this is getting trickled down from the United Nations. So, you have, you have the United Nations, you have the World Economic Forum, you have all these supranational governing bodies that give suggestions, make policy recommendations, create things. These come also from, the colleges, the universities where the research occurs. So sure, you may have, for example, at your local level, they're approving the specific curriculum, but they're just kind of rubber stamping something that's getting trickled down from the top, and is basically just repackaged. So you're going to have this, from everywhere from New York to, Oklahoma, just anywhere. And like I said, it's because it's global, it's outside of the United States. So you might have it in Canada. You might have the same issues in Ireland. It's, just keep your eyes out, check your local schools. I also recommend checking your private schools because this is not just limited to the public school district. When it's tied in with, things like educational policy and teacher training, and how you, can receive funds or, get school choice funds, things like that. All of that is going to play a role in, private and parochial schools adopting this. And then, just ask questions. You don't have to, just inquire what they're doing, ask them to specifically define these things. Just, be a little bit of a pain and make them answer questions that they're not prepared to answer, that they think that they could just use fluffy language to get out of.
For sure. For sure. So what I did was, I just looked quickly. I literally did like a 3-minute search on a school district that I'm familiar with. And just real quickly, this was the 2023-24 K through 6 humanities curriculum overview. Real quickly, right off the bat, first grade, from Engage New York's a kind of resource website for teachers in New York school districts and teachers. Why should I be a global citizen? So this looks to me part, their social studies curriculum here, first grade, and it looks to me like it's for this whole 15-week block. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out. Also, so I went to the website. This is what it was. I mean, it's a whole, I don't know how many pages it is.
First grade.
Oh, this is first grade. Yes, this is first grade. Right. So I just wanted to kind of put that up there real quick. And I mean, literally, like I said, this is a couple of these things I picked up in just like a 3 minute search. This is from the county that school district was in, from the BOCES, from the estimated budget 21-22. A couple of things that they had in the budget here. Center for Educational Equity and Social Justice. The center acknowledges that schools are transformative places of opportunity and equity for all students. In its celebration of the diversity of our global community, the center supports the development of systems that establish equity, pedagogy, and culturally responsive teaching that allow students of all backgrounds to achieve at high academic levels. Another one here, Center for Sustainability, there it is again, and Climate Education, right? So this is all tied in to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And real quickly, I know we only have a few minutes left. I'll go through this, relatively quickly. I just wanted to kind of give people an understanding of the difference between kind of inalienable rights and human rights. You hear human rights all the time being discussed on TV and all the time, right? But it's important to understand what human rights actually mean. I'd be willing to bet it doesn't mean what you think it means. So this is from the Declaration of Independence, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, the important thing to understand here is that our rights come from a higher power, right? They come from, whether you want to say that comes from God, from natural law, however you want to look at it. But they come from a higher power. Our rights are not granted to us by the government or from other people. They come from a higher power, and they cannot be taken away from us. So this was an article here from Whitney Webb's website, Unlimited Hangout, talking about the sustainable SDG 16, and building the global police state. The things that I want to point out here quickly is Whitney and this Ian Davis went through the United Nations documents, and they show how the United Nations defines human rights. And I just quickly want to kind of move through this so you can see and get an understanding of what it is, right? So human rights versus inalienable rights. And I'm just going to read, I know it's very small, I'm just going to read these highlighted sections here, right? For reasons that will become apparent, it is important that we fully understand the United Nations concept of human rights. And for some reason, let me see here. Here we go. Human rights are nothing like inalienable rights. Inalienable rights, just like I was talking about with the segment of the Declaration of Independence, right? Inalienable rights, unlike human rights, are not bestowed upon us by any governing authority. Rather, they are innate to each of us. They are immutable. They are ours in equal measure. The only source of inalienable rights is natural law or God's law. Beyond the preamble, the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights concerns itself exclusively with human rights, but asserting as it does that human rights are some sort of expression of inalienable rights is a fabrication, a lie. They're not the same, right? So inalienable rights and human rights are not the same. Human rights, according to the UDHR, are created by certain human beings. These are rights that are created by human beings and are bestowed by those human beings upon other human beings. What do I get here? Okay. Everyone has the human right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. This was an excerpt from the United Nations. Note, we put human in brackets in the above quote and other UN quotes below to alert readers that these documents are not referring to inalienable rights. Both articles mean that without legal existence, those rights may not be asserted by a person within the domestic legal order. As we shall see, the ability to prove one's identity will become a prerequisite for legal existence. Thus, in a post-Sustainable Development Goal 16 world, persons without United Nations approved identification will be unable to assert their human rights. Under the United Nations system of human rights, human beings are not considered to have any inalienable rights. For, as the United Nations would have it, our alleged human rights can be observed only if we comply with the current legal order. That order is conditional, and it is subject to constant change. In the exercise of his human rights and freedoms, everyone shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the human rights and freedoms of others, and of meeting the just requirements of public order and the general welfare in a democratic society. These human rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. I'm going to read that part again, right? It says, these human rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. And this is the last slide I have here, kind of to wrap this whole thing up on the human rights part. In plain English, we are only allowed to exercise our alleged human rights subject to the dictates of governments, intergovernmental organizations, and other UN stakeholders. The bottom line then is that what the United Nations calls human rights are not rights of any kind at all. They are government and intergovernmental permits by which our behavior is controlled. Thus, by the United Nations definition, human rights are the antithesis of inalienable rights. So just quickly to kind of to put the point on that is inalienable rights come from a higher power, right? They come from natural law or from God's law, depending on, your belief in terms of being religious or not. But they come from a higher power. Human rights are rights that are given that are given by humans to other humans and can be taken away from those humans, from other people, right? So human rights are rights that are devised by people, and they can be given or taken away depending on what they want to do. So it's very important to understand when you hear human rights that they're not actually rights at all. They're just something, they're basically, as they said in that article, there are things that the government is supposedly permitting you to do. All right, and that's not what our country is founded on. So I just wanted to kind of mention that because it all ties into this global citizenship education. It all ties into the global agenda, the sustainable development goals. It all ties in together. So kids, I appreciate you coming on and presenting that information for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think it's very important for people to be aware of and to learn more about if they're not that familiar with it yet, and to look into it more, and to find out more about it, because just like everything else that's going on, these buzzwords, these very nice sounding words, they don't mean what people think they mean, because the woke are masters at manipulating language and manipulating people into going along with things that they don't understand what's going on. So okay, so yeah, let's wrap it up there. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely have you on again sometime. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right.